Welcome to Resume Well. We're exposing the intersection of wellness, woo, and work. We've been told that the antidote to professional burnout is personal wellness, and sometimes that means confronting our inner skeptic and exploring the taboo anyway. This season, we're all about putting our intuition to work at work. Welcome. Today, we are so thrilled. I'm so thrilled to welcome Jess Bubbico onto the podcast. Jess is dedicated to helping individuals and teams unlock their unique code for success and prosperity, both in their professional and personal lives. As a dynamic speaker, teacher, and guide in human design and gene keys, Jess champions the belief that everyone holds the keys to their own greatest challenges. So by delving into these unique blueprints of one's life purpose, which is pretty big, through human design and gene keys, Jess assists people in developing a deep trust in themselves and discovering their personal zone of genius. This profound understanding not only enhances team cohesion and productivity, but it also steers individuals and teams towards greater fulfillment and prosperity. So, Jess is going to share some insights into how understanding our inner workings can transform our outer realities. She is also the host of Waking Up with Jess, which is a wonderful podcast all about human design and gene keys, available on Apple and Spotify. And she is also, the list goes on, she is also the author of Jessie Lou and the Magic of You, which is the first book in the Magical Adventures of Jessie Lou series, which is aimed at teaching self-love and simple emotional awareness techniques to children and adults. That was a lot, Jess. Welcome on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit before. I'm so excited. I had you do like a very, very kind of like abbreviated human design session. And I have like an app on my phone and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, it's like so confusing if you're not, if you don't really know like what you're looking for, I think. But I like to start off. So going back a little bit, I like to start off by asking everybody on the podcast, every guest gets this question. So if you were at a dinner party, Jess, and someone came up to you and asked you, what do you do? What would your response be?
That's such a great question. If somebody came up to me at a dinner party and asked me what I do, it's so interesting because it's shifted and changed so much over the years. And right now, a lot of what I'm doing is writing. So I've actually been introducing what I do through the lens of sharing that I'm a writer and that I write and share in different ways.
Okay. And how do people normally respond to a writer?
Oh, I get that. They know what that is. So it's a nice segue for me to be able to introduce, like, I wrote a book about emotional awareness. I have a Substack where I talk about this system called human design. And usually people go, oh, what is that? I've never heard of it. So it's kind of, for me, it's my easy handshake to be able to give something tangible to people that they can understand. And then I can kind of segue into the very multi-passionate nature that is Jess Bubbico.
Yeah. And I love that because I think, well, at least in my business, I have a lot of clients and friends who are multi-passionate and, multi-hyphenates, if you will. So I love having people on who are that and really own it and have figured out how to just be at peace with it because it can be a little chaotic. I am also a multi-hyphenate, I guess I would say. A reluctant multi-hyphenate.
It's interesting because years ago, when I was a speech therapist, that's where I started out in my traditional career. And then I kind of went down, I saw a lot of holes and gaps of what I had missed in my learnings as a speech pathologist of like, this kid's coming in, most of what the challenges were behavioral challenges. And I was like, I had maybe, even though I was a speech therapist, I had like maybe 3 classes on therapy in graduate school. And like understanding behaviors. And so when I transitioned into more of like the spiritual work, I've always been multi-passionate and I used to see it as a negative. But now, and then I started going, well, I don't know how to describe myself to people. I don't know what to say. I'm doing all this work. I'm doing energy work. I'm doing this and that. If you tell somebody what energy work is, they're like, I don't know what that means. And then I, had to work through shame on that. But when I actually think about it, if you asked me what my best friend and my sister do for a living and I gave you the answer, it would probably be like PR and marketing. And the two of them would probably be like, kind of, but I actually do this or actually do that. So I started to come to peace with the fact that really no one's job is easy to understand when you start to get into the nuance of it. And so I started to look at what's the most approachable package that I can describe my multi-passionate nature within. And that's changed over time. Like I consider myself a teacher. I'm a teacher of human design. I consider myself a writer. I'm a speaker. I teach, I'll bring human design into corporate settings. So I would say I kind of choose what part of my multi-passionate nature wants to come out that day. And I see it as just a conversation starter versus like, I have to figure out how to tell people what I do so I can be more relatable.
And I think, you mentioned shame, and I think that is so relatable because I think a lot of people who have trouble fitting into a box come up against that because it's just in our society, we're really expected to be able to have the nice little package and explain very quickly, like elevator pitch it very easily. And if you can't do that, it can be like a blow to your self-esteem and it can be really difficult to work through. So how did you, would you mind, like, how long did that take you to figure out and like get a hold of?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And I can very much relate to the shame factor because I felt a lot of shame, especially going from like, I'm a speech therapist to I'm doing energy work. Like I valued so much growing up, as I'm sure probably a lot of your listeners can understand, like education and being smart and getting straight A's and checking all the boxes. So for me, when I had to come to that point of realizing like, I'm no longer going to fit into a box, it was very uncomfortable. And then I think, and there's no blame or shame of anyone. I think a lot of traditional, especially when you start to enter into entrepreneurship, a lot of traditional entrepreneurial spaces kind of ask you to go, like, if you can't describe yourself in 30 seconds or less, then there's something wrong with you. And, I think the paradigm is changing so much, how we conceptualize work, how we understand work. And I think for me, so much of, which is what we're going to talk about today, what helped me to overcome shame is understanding my own human design. Because, the standard before, you were born the same year that human design came onto the world, the same year that it was, quote, downloaded, onto the planet. And human design helps us to, in my perspective, put language to energy. Like I could sit here with you and go like, okay, here's what's different about Courtney and I. She's got brown hair that's longer than mine. She's got a different body frame and shape than I have. But oftentimes it's hard to conceptualize and make tangible energetic differences because we've been taught, especially since the Industrial Revolution, like this is how you function. You wake up in the morning, you go to work, you crash at the end of the day, you feed your kids, you have 2.5 kids, you get married by this age, right? That's all changing. We're seeing all of those norms being broken. And so what human design has helped me so much with, which we can get into what that is understanding that that was the only language we had available at that time from a survival perspective. Like we had to get up and we had to work that way and you had to function that way to fit into society. But now as society has evolved, we no longer have to fit in those boxes, but it can be uncomfortable to try to describe how our energy works and how we're different and what that is if we don't have a language, which human design gives that language. And that's why, as you mentioned in the beginning, you said, it can be very confusing. It's because it's learning a whole different language. It's not a language that we've necessarily, it's like learning French. You've been speaking English your whole life. But once you kind of get the hang of it and you give yourself time and practice and you don't expect yourself to get it all in one day, but see it as a process, it can be so helpful in releasing shame, coming into self-acceptance, understanding who you are, and then becoming very unshakable in your core when somebody else is like, well, why aren't you that way? Or why can't you fit into that box? Or, oh my gosh, my parents don't know what to tell people I do for a living at a dinner party or whatever, babies triggering that shame.
So great bridge. What is human design? Tell us.
Yes. So human design is a system that essentially describes the it's an operating manual to understand your personal energy and how your energy functions. It's based upon your date of birth, time of birth, place of birth, not based on your name. A lot of people will be like, does it matter if I put Jessica or Jess into the system? I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. Date, time, place of birth. And basically what it does is it pulls up, if anybody's familiar with like the Myers-Briggs or any of those types of personality tests, those tests have, they're archetypal tests. So it's going to tell you, okay, you're an introvert. What does that mean? You have more extroverted energy. What does that mean? We have the same thing in human design, but instead of there being maybe 2 archetypes for each, I don't know a ton about the Myers-Briggs, but like instead of there being
just did a podcast on. I just did an episode. Part 1. I'm doing a part 2. Yeah.
Everyone else knows better than I do right now. I'll go back and listen to it. But it gives us 5 archetypes that we go, okay, your energy fits into one of these. And then there's a ton of nuance that goes with it. But essentially what it does is it puts language to the energetic differences between us. Some people are gut decision makers. Some people need more time to make their decisions, things like that. Some people are multi-passionate, have a ton of different interests. Some people get massively stressed out by having a ton of different interests, need to focus on one thing. Some people wake up with a full tank of gas in the morning, crash by the end of the night. Some people have energy for 3 days and then it dips and it crashes and they need a week off, So it helps us to put language to, much like if you think about, an operating manual for a car, like you pull out the owner's manual on your Honda, it's going to tell you how it operates and runs versus a Tesla that's going to run very differently. So it helps you to understand your own personal operating system.
Okay. So what type are you?
I'm a manifester.
Ooh, okay. So what does that mean?
Let's go. We can go quickly into the 5 types because you're a manifesting generator. So first off, if you are like, I'm super curious about this, I want to pull my chart so I can actually follow along. I have a system on my website that you can go, and I'm sure it'll be linked in the show notes.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you put the W's before jessbubbico.com because it's been acting a little finicky lately. But you can pull your chart using the website that'll probably be in the show notes. So when you pull that up, there's going to be something called type. And your type, there's 5 of them, and it's going to describe kind of in general how your energy runs, right? Kind of if you think about it, it's like putting your key in the ignition. It's going to turn the car on and it's going to run. But then we can get into the nuance of like, okay, but the button to roll down the window might be on the center console in this car versus in the, in a Honda. Okay. All Hondas, we're going to use whatever. You can turn on the key to the ignition, it'll turn on. And then we can get into more of the nuance. This can be this big generalized energy. So the 5 types are manifester, manifesting generator, projector, and reflector. Manifestors, we call them the initiator. Manifestors are here to initiate new things and to get new things and new initiatives started in the world. This doesn't mean that no other type can get anything started or off the ground. We all have a unique way of getting things started. But the idea with manifestors is that they kind of get what's called a creative urge, this thing that they're like, I just have to go and make this happen. I have to go and create this thing. I have to go and do this thing. And that is how life is trying to move a manifestor forward. So if you're saying to yourself, well, I want to get a new job, you might have the urge to call an old, you're kind of in that energy. I need a new job. I need to do something new. And one day you just get this urge. You're like, I don't know why, but I need to reach out to Calvin, who I was in HR with 30 years ago, and just see how he's doing. And then you connect with Calvin and he's like, I've been thinking about you too. This is so crazy. Let's meet for lunch next week. So you kind of get these urges that propel you to start something new. And the idea is you're here to initiate a process and get it started. Oftentimes with manifestors, are not always very good at finishing things, which is also sometimes a characteristic of a manifesting generator, which we'll talk about as well. But they tend to have a lot of energy to get something started. I think of it like the quarterback in football. They kick the ball, they get the process started, and then they often need the support of other people to help them bring it through to fruition. They say that a manifestor has kind of a closed aura. So sometimes manifestors can repel other people. People tend to either like love a manifestor or really dislike a manifestor, which I can attest to for myself personally. But that kind of tends to be the energy, because if you think about it, some people don't want to be moved. Like some people don't want to be initiated by whatever you're creating. So the people who are like, yes, tell me more. I would love to learn about that. I'd love to hear about that, are the ones that you're here to move forward. The ones who are like, get away from me. I don't necessarily want you in my space, are the ones who maybe you're not meant to move, So that's the energy of the manifestor, the initiator. They get it started. They have urges. Energy tends to wax and wane for a manifestor. You'll have all this energy to start something, and then you'll kind of like crash and have, I don't want to say crash, but your energy will kind of come to a stopping point, and then you need to rest. So the traditional 9 to 5 sort of working all day with a full tank of gas doesn't always work for manifestors, but we can often condition ourselves like, oh, I'm just used to running this way, but I'm constantly burning myself out. So interesting for a manifestor just to kind of note how does your energy operate? Do you tend to find yourself running for a while and then crashing, trying to keep up with other people? Or do you give yourself that space to initiate something, start something, get a process started, and then give yourself downtime, rest before something else comes through for you to initiate?
Yeah. So would you say for a manifestor, if they are really, really good at initiating like a big project or a new business or something like that, let's say, once they get to that point in their process where they kind of stop and that energy kind of halts, is that a time, like what happens then? Should they then have like someone that they can hand it off to that is really good at finishing? And okay. She's nodding. Yes. Okay.
Yes, I'm nodding. Seriously. Well, here's what I would say. I think it depends, because we're all intuitive beings. We all, like, our intuition always knows. So I never try to, in the beginning, it's easy to learn human design and be like, okay, I need a projector now, or okay, I need a generator now. But I'll give you an example. There actually have 2 examples of this. My book, Jessie Lou and the Magic of You, that I wrote, it came through.
Cutest title, by the way. I love it.
I love honestly, the illustrations are so good. I did not do them myself, but the book makes me happy to look at. So I have it here next to me. But this book came through. I was like out to lunch one day. I'm going through a really, really hard time. And I was just trying to process my own emotions. And I just pulled open the notes section of my phone, and the whole book poured out. It's what I would call like a creative urge. It was like, it just had to come through. And then I sat on it. This was 2020. This came through right at the beginning of the pandemic. And then I sat on it until the end of 2022. And it was birthed in May of last year. And what I struggled with was, I was like, this whole idea came through, this whole book came through. But I was like, the halt for me was like, I don't know how to publish a book, but I really need help getting it moving forward. So I actually hired 2 people who could help me get the illustrator, get all of that. And that was massively helpful. And we'll talk about like all the types are meant to work together. So if you think about it, like it as a manifestor, if I didn't have the creative urge to go create this thing, then I would also not be giving work to the manifesting generator and projector that helped me bring it through, because it gave them something to respond to, which we'll talk about in a second. But I have another book that I wrote. It's called The Entrepreneurial Scales of Development, because I started to notice very consistent patterns in how people move from I hate my job all the way through to I just scaled my business to millions of dollars. And I wrote this whole thing, and it's just, I put it out on Substack, and it's just sitting there. And I was like, this needs to go somewhere, but I don't have the energy to do it. So I just hired a proofreader and editor, and she's going to take all of it and rearrange it. She's a generator, gave her something to respond to so that she could activate her gift. So we'll get into the other types, but I would say, yes, hiring people I think can be very helpful, but I would hire someone or ask for support on something and work from a place of, the energy's not there, but I know this thing needs to come out. So who feels right, or who's getting excited about helping me with this project?
Yeah. And the reason I wanted I was interested in that answer is because I do think that a lot of people who are creative get these creative urges and they don't know how to bring it into like the practical world because that's just a totally different like skill set. And it can be really, really, what's the word? Just not disorienting, but like upsetting because they just they know that they created this really cool thing, but without the skills to bring it into the world, it feels like they feel like a failure, right? Because it's like, why was I given this, like this download or whatever you want to call it, if I can't do anything with it? And basically what you're saying is that's okay. You don't need to know exactly how to do it or how to bring it out because other people do.
Totally.
Yeah.
And with that, I like to think about, I gave this example the other day, like if we were all like a disco ball in the sky at some point, all of us, we were one whole piece. Then the big bang happened and all of our energies got scattered across the world. We're just trying to come back together and find each other to help each other out. And I think a lot of people, like we're just trying to fit our disco ball back together. And I think a lot of people, I know this was me and it took me many years to get over this. Like I was a high achiever and told myself I had to do everything myself. But the truth of the matter is I'm not good at everything. I don't try to change my oil, mostly because I don't really want to learn how to change my oil, but also because that brings someone else joy. And I think with our creative process, like oftentimes if you're the creative brain, that your favorite skill might not be the organization of said thing into the next thing to get it out there. But somebody else might be in corporate, really, just dreaming of working with creatives and has these incredible project management skills. And they're like, how do I get out of this situation? I only know what to do with working in this job I don't like. It's like, oh, well, perfect. I have an opportunity for you. So why don't we bring our skills together, and work together from that perspective?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So sorry. I could like keep asking like 1,000 questions for each type.
We'll keep going.
Okay.
Let's go with the book example, though, because I think if we could take this through a tangible example to see how each type operates differently. So let's use writing a book. Okay, I had an urge. I wrote a book. I sat down at lunch at True Foods in Naples, Florida, and this book just came out of me. It just hit me out of nowhere and wrote it. Cool. Okay, let's go to generators next and how they kind of operate and create. So generators have what's called, so if a manifestor has like a closed aura, because it's kind of a closed protective. It doesn't mean you're not friendly and loving. I think I'm pretty friendly and loving. The closed
I was going to say, you're very friendly.
Like I wouldn't say. Yeah. The closed aura is more so about like protecting your energy because it comes in bursts and spurts.
Okay.
Generator types have this beautiful, the manifestor aura is beautiful too, but it's this like open enveloping aura that's designed to pull opportunities in for them to respond to. So in this example, instead of generators, what's called your strategy is to respond. So instead of the kind of manifestor is just do it, the urge comes, just do it and make it happen. The energy of the generator is less just do it and more see what shows up to respond to in your environment to bring said thing to life. So as an example, let's say, and I'll say this too about generators. Generators are designed to wake up in the morning with a full tank of gas and wear it out by the end of the day, doing things that bring them joy. Mm-hmm. This doesn't mean a 9-to-5 situation. One of my really good girlfriends is a generator. And she's like, on Friday, she gets up, her and her dad, they go and do this activity together. And then the middle of the day, she comes home and she works and then she spends time with her family. Like she spent the entire day doing things that make her feel satisfied and feel really good. Mm-hmm. And so if we look at a book example, for somebody like her as a generator, she's looking for opportunities and things to respond to that light her up and get her excited from the inside out. It feels like it turns her body into on mode and into go mode. So let's say, for her, she's wanting to write a children's book. She's always dreamed of it. And she keeps finding that her son is struggling with this one thing in particular. Mm-hmm. And she's really mastered helping him with it. And somebody just says to her like, oh my gosh, like, Amanda, you should write a book on this. You're so good at it. And in her body, she's like, oh yeah, I'm going to write a book on this. And she gets moving with it. So the idea for a generator is you don't have to go out and make things happen. Go into your environment, do what lights you up and feels satisfying and good to you, and then use life to initiate you into what your next step is. So like I said with the proofreader, I was like, does it get you excited to help proofread this thing and bring it forward? She's like, oh yeah, I'm very excited about that. And then she goes and does it, because generators can tend to have a lot of consistent energy, but that can make them say yes to things that they don't actually like doing. That can cause them, they're like, I could do this forever, but I'm tired. And the signature theme for a generator is satisfaction. You should feel satisfied by the work you're doing, or satisfied by the dinners you're cooking or creating. Like, you should feel satisfied. And if you're really frustrated by something, that's a signpost that something is out of whack or out of balance. Doesn't mean you need to quit it. Maybe at your job, you're really frustrated. It doesn't mean you need to quit your job. Maybe you need to quit your job, but it also might mean that like your boundaries are bleeding a little bit and you need to clean them up because you're finding that you're doing something for people that doesn't light you up, or whatever it may be. So your signpost is, I feel deeply satisfied by this. This feels good. Oftentimes it's this like feeling. It feels good. Frustration, something's off. Manifestors, anger, something's off here. I'm not feeling good. I'm angry. Peace, deep inner peace. So I think a lot of times people think I'm supposed to be climbing to the top of the mountain, feeling elated all of the time, but it's actually more about this bodily feeling of satisfaction and peace, and like essentially being at peace within ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. Just the generator really, I get that. My husband is a generator. Actually, my husband and both of my kids are generators. And my husband is really, really good. And I didn't really understand until you were explaining it. He's an attorney and he's brilliant. He's like the smartest person I know. And he is really, really good at having someone basically like give him this idea, right? So he doesn't own the law firm, but he's amazing working within this thing that somebody else created and like supporting it and like just going with it. And he loves it, and he does get frustrated when something that isn't necessary to keeping, business coming in or keeping like cases moving, like if it's something arbitrary or marginal to that, he gets very, very frustrated. And it's like so on point with what you're saying, but he loves it. Like I can tell when he has a good day because like he got some cases in or, something like that. I don't know all the lawyer
lingo,
but
but if you think about it, and this is the thing too, generators tend to like to focus on one thing at a time. And we'll talk about manifesting generators. It doesn't mean you can't be managing multiple things at a law firm, but he might be like, this is my piece of the pie and I love developing expertise in this area and doing it well. And if we're thinking about human design being the language of energy, have you ever been pent up in your house? Like you could probably all go back to COVID to some degree, like you pent up in your house or you've been with the kids all day and you feel frustrated and you're just like, I need to get outside. Like I need to do something with my energy. When it's a buildup of energy that has nowhere to go. So for a generator, their energy is building up and they want to move forward because they like creating and they like doing things they like. So if there's a stoppage in that, like we're doing things that are unnecessary, I can't use my energy on my expertise. It's the same thing as being stuck inside the house and not being able to leave. You want to go live your life. You want to go be outside. You want to go do these things. So it's important to maybe address, okay, this is why my energy can't move in the right direction. Do I need to ask somebody else for help? Do I need to set a boundary? Do I need to, whatever? Do we need to revise this thing so that my energy can keep moving in a clear way?
Yeah.
Okay, manifesting generators, we're going to do next, because the manifesting generator is kind of a combination of a generator and a manifester. And here's the interesting thing. I have a generator dad and a manifesting generator mom. And what I find is that there can often be tension between generators and manifesting generators in that they function very differently. I don't mean tension like, oh, you're going to be fighting all of the time. But because there's a similarity, Manifesting generators are designed to be multi-passionate people whose energy is moving in multiple different directions at one time. So my dad, he'd wake up in the morning. I could tell you his whole morning routine. He'd make the oatmeal. He'd go do this. He'd go do this. He could do this. He'd go do this. Then he comes home at night and he blah. My mom is like a manifesting generator who's starting 14 different things at one time. She's got dinner going. She's vacuuming the house. She's doing this and this. Like she's got I don't want to say a multitasker because I don't think that's really what a manifesting generator is, but she's got multiple different things going at one time. And oftentimes what makes a manifesting generator different than a generator is that manifesting generators tend to move fast through things. They have that manifestor energy and they skip steps. So they tend to skip steps. And generators tend to like to be like, we don't skip the steps. Like we need to get from point A to point B. And don't take anything too generalized. Like you might be like, yeah, I skip steps, but it's kind of this approach, like manifesting generators, we call them, Karen Curry Parker is another human design teacher. She has quantum human design. She calls them time benders because they're always trying to get to the fastest, like get to the end as fast as they can. They're doing multiple things. And so again, that can sometimes, if we expect our manifesting generator partner to, do one thing at a time, that can get frustrating for them. And same thing if we expect our generator partner to want to like be multi-passionate and why are you just sticking to one thing and why are you so routine? Like we're not giving each other the space to fully be ourselves. And I say that again, because I grew up in a family of generators and manifesting generators. So as a manifesting generator, you're here to be multi-passionate. You're here to move fast. My best friend who was here this morning is a manifesting generator. She's like mastering LinkedIn right now. She's working on corporate stuff. She has talks that she's working on over here. She's doing this over here. And she's working on multiple things at one time. And that feels good for her. So manifesting generators, you're designed to be multi-passionate. You're designed to do what lights you up as well. When something stops lighting you up, it might be time to put it to the side. You might pick it back up later. As an example, my friend who was here, she did a TED Talk, great TED Talk. Things don't take time, they take courage. Her name's Alexandria Agresta. And she did this TED Talk, I want to say it was like 2020 or 2021. And she kind of like put it on the back burner. And she's like, okay, it's just simmering here for now. And now she's picking it back up as she's doing more corporate stuff. So the idea is like manifesting generators, let yourself be multi-passionate. It's okay if you pick stuff up and put it down. You're probably going to skip steps because you're trying to figure out what steps you can skip and which ones you cannot skip. So you have to let yourself be flexible in your process. And for you guys, I've found that the strategy is, let's say as an example, we'll use the book example again. I break it down into envision, respond, inform. So what this means is you've been thinking about, so Alex has been thinking about taking her TED Talk and turning it into a book. And she's been envisioning herself on stage with it. That's just an example. She's envisioning herself on stage. She's envisioning herself writing it. She's envisioning what the layout of it looks like. And then let's say she starts going and speaking more in corporate. And all of a sudden people are like, you should write a book. And then she's like, boom, I'm doing it. Yeah. What happens is when that thing responds to you, she's like, yep, it feels like it's time. I'm excited. That same sacral light up feeling. The informing comes because she's got to be like, hey, I'm about to go write this book. I'm probably going to write it very fast. And I'm probably going to be in a deep rabbit hole of creation for the next 3 weeks. So just letting you know, here's what I'm doing. And I'll let you know when I'm done. Okay. Does that resonate for you? What comes up here?
Yeah, totally. But actually, it was so funny when you were talking about skipping steps. So this is like such a practical example. So last week, it was my son's birthday and I got him, he's obsessed with cars. He's 2. And I got him one of those little tight cars that they rent, it's like it's a big car. They go in it and they use their feet to pedal. And I, for some reason, thought it was going to be very easy to put together. And I got one for my daughter too, because sharing, it's a whole nother, this is not a parenting podcast, but yeah. So I got one for her too. So my dad and I are putting them together. And I was skipping steps because I was like, oh, there doesn't need to be a lock on this door, on the inside of this toy car. Why would I, want him to lock himself in there? That's stupid. And also, we're crunched for time. And there were just some things that I was like, this isn't necessary. This isn't necessary. All I need is just this car to be done in time before people get here and for it to work. And he was like going through every step and like making sure it worked and all of that. And yeah, it was just really funny. And my stepmom was like, thank God you're not a nurse, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that probably wouldn't be great. But totally.
Pull your doctor's human design before you have a surgery.
Yeah, right. No manifest. No, no
Kidding,
MGs out there.
But it is true. Like that is, you know, and just like my friend that I was talking about, like she will watch TV shows. I'm like, how do you watch as many shows as you do, create websites, do these things, master all this stuff? And one day she came over and I'm like, oh, she watches it on 1.5 speed and skips through it to get the high level overviews so that she gets just enough and she knows the gist of it. I'm like, you're insane, but also a very manifesting generator. Like it's very like, we need to go fast. And I think one of the biggest shame spirals I see manifesting generators go into is that like, why can't you just stick with one thing? Why can't you just put yourself in one box? And it's like, you're not meant to. Mm-hmm. And we could talk about profiles as we go. We'll probably want time to talk about profiles, but there's something on your profile that kind of goes like, here's your zone of genius. You know, you're 6'2", you're in your 30s. That's your profile, 6'2". Like you're somebody who's designed to the first 30 years of your life was all about bumping into stuff and trying stuff out. Having a long laundry list of stuff you did and you quit and you put down, but it's all going to lead to later in your life, probably integrating many of those things in some kind of way and sharing those lessons. So that's where it's like, it's easy to shame ourselves when we try to compare ourselves to this perfect person that really genuinely doesn't exist.
Right.
But you know, your skipping steps helps all of us. Like I'm learning LinkedIn from my friend because I'm like, she's going to run with it. She's going to come and teach me everything she did, what I need to do, what I don't need to do, and everything in between. Great. She's actually going and doing a talk on it right now. You know, so that's where we have to understand that what our energy is pulling us towards is because it's oftentimes what we're going to teach or end up helping other people with as well. So that's our MG. And your signpost is like frustration and anger when something is off. Maybe you've overstayed your welcome somewhere. You need to have a hard conversation, boundaries, etc. And then peace and satisfaction are your energies of, your energy operating smoothly. Mm-hmm. Projectors are our next one. I was going to ask if your dad was a projector when you said he came.
I don't know what he is. I need to
be a projector or a
it's
generator.
His birthday today, actually.
My gosh, happy birthday, Dad.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I'll have to, I don't know if he knows what time he was born though. Like boomers don't know anything. Yeah.
So projectors are interesting because manifesting generators and generators kind of wake up with a full tank of gas in the morning, wear it out by the end of the day. If they're doing things that truly light them up, they don't have to, again, do one thing. It could be anything. Projectors are here. Your energy waxes and wanes a little bit more, but projectors are here to be guides and to guide energy. Projectors tend to have this beautiful and innate ability to see things that we are unable to see for ourselves. Because if you think about it, manifestors are out here going like, I got to get this thing started. I don't know why. I just have the urge. I got to tell everybody I'm about to do it who's going to be impacted by it. Generators and manifesting generators are out in the environment having no shortage of things to respond to. Like, oh, that lights me up. That sounds like such a good idea. I'm going to go and create that. And basically the projectors are standing there like, okay, I'm watching all these nut jobs out here creating all these things. And I see how we can do it better. And I see things about them that they're unable to see for themselves. And so you have this, I like to think of them as like a project manager in that, again, they have this eye or this ability, this intuition to be able to sense like the direction we need to go in, what's off, where we could maximize and optimize something. I have a projector in my life who just like recently, I was like, I think I'm ready. Like I am ready to be done with this. And they're like, no, I don't think you are. Like, I think you're selling yourself short. I'm like, oh God, okay, no, I actually think you're right. Cause I do think I was trying to run away from that a little bit. And like, yeah, very good at like guiding you back to whatever is meant to be. But here's the thing for the projector is you have to be invited to share.
Yes.
Because
so what,
go ahead.
Can you explain this? Because I've had some clients that are projectors And so they're coming for career coaching. And that's a difficult one to coach because it's like, well, you can't just sit there and wait to be invited to a job interview, right? Like that's not practical. That's not how the world works. So if there's a projector who is looking for a new job, how would just as an example, like how would they do that?
This is where I think sometimes we get too linear with human design. We're like, must wait for an invitation, must
like coming in the mail, like from
it
comes.
Yeah, like Prince Charming shows up the door as like, I want that sister of all three of them. It just doesn't work that way. The idea with the projector is you need to love, honor, and value yourself deeply. I don't want to say you have to do that first. You're on a journey of learning to love and accept yourself and your energy and your gifts, and then going out there and being seen, doing what you do best so that people can go, I want your wisdom and your perspective and your advice. Projectors can be one of the busiest types when they are in alignment because they are driven by a feeling of feeling successful. Like they want to feel success. And so they are here to guide people. And so it's not about just sitting back and waiting for somebody to come and invite you in. It's actually about going out and being seen, doing what you do best, and then noticing who recognizes you and asks you for your perspective. So let me give you an example. One of my best friends from growing up is a projector. I tended to always surround myself with projectors because I would need real talks, and they always gave them to me. And I always invited them because I wanted to know what they saw that I didn't see. So she was a really amazing party planner. Like she's just really good at organizing and coordinating parties. And so growing up, I saw that in her because she would just do it, and she would do what she did best, whether it was organizing for a friend or this, that, and the other thing.
I have a friend like this. I'm thinking of a friend exactly like she did all like the Bachelorette. Like, yeah, she's like the best maid of honor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Her family does not recognize this of her at all. So she would be like, oh, there's a family party. She'd be like, I'll do it. And she would just like try and step up and volunteer herself. And they would never recognize her for it. Whereas me, I just watched her in life. She was just naturally gifted and good at it. And I'd be like, I suck at this. Can you please help me do this? So maybe it was she organized her own birthday party. She didn't wait for anybody to invite her to do that. She organized her own birthday party, or she'd be really into decorating and would like decorate things that volunteer for committees where they needed decorators or things like that. So it's like, be in your zone of genius and do what you do. There's another human design specialist. Her name is Erin Claire Jones. She's always on Instagram sharing her perspectives and her wisdom on human design. And then people invite her. She got invited to write a book. She gets invited on podcasts. Like she's not pushing forward, but she's also not sitting back behind the sidelines, not showing herself. She's very visible.
Yeah. And I think so that brings to mind like entrepreneurship, right? And that's kind of how, so I don't know if that is something that you found with projectors, but are they good at entrepreneurship? Because I feel like that is kind of the main advice that most entrepreneurs get is like, you just have to do the thing. So you show people that you are doing it and then people will come to you for it, right? You can't just kind of like tell people you're good at something without the proof. And sounds like that. So is there and I know we haven't gotten to reflectors yet, but is out of all the 5 types, like is there one that's the best at entrepreneurship? And is it projectors? This is like such a big question.
I think that my answer to that's going to be no, because I think everybody who feels the entrepreneurial spirit can be good at entrepreneurship so long as they are following their energetics. Like, let me give you an example. If people know Amanda Francis, she's got like a bunch of stuff on like manifestation. And I'm pretty sure she's a generator type. If you think about it, maybe she is out here like, okay, she's like her classes are on money. And I'm in no way affiliated with her or saying her work is good or not good. I'm just using it as an example. So she's somebody who's like, she might respond, a bunch of people, she puts a question up on her stories and she's like, what's your biggest challenge with money right now? And everybody starts answering the question. And she gets super lit up by, I don't know, and the fact that everyone's struggling with financial planning. I don't know. That's not what she does. But they get this one thing that lights her up as a generator. She's going to go and create. and she's going to go and bring things into the world. When you look at a projector, just as an example, I'm trying to think of a projector that I know. Jenna Zoe is another human design woman, and Erin Claire Jones. They're just like, I'm going to stand up and share my gifts and share my voice and put myself out there and see who recognizes me for it, because there's something very alluring about a projector who's in alignment with their energy. One of my friends is a projector. She's a brand designer. She just created her own personal brand that was gorgeous. And then people were like, I want you to do that to my stuff. So I think it's less about could you be good at it and much more about, are you putting your energy out there in a way that feels authentic for you? Because even like I said about profiles, which we won't get into, like a fourth line profile is going to go about building a business very differently than a first line profile. Fourth line profiles are all about friends, connections, and getting your opportunities through your network. So somebody who's a fourth line is going to could be very successful at entrepreneurship if they're going and networking with people versus just sitting behind a screen trying to get strangers to like what they do. Versus like one of my friends who's a fifth line, she was like, I'm just not getting in front of enough people. So she was like, I'm going to make myself an Instagram influencer. And she did. And now she's got like hundreds of thousands of followers from like 20,000 beforehand, which is still a lot. But all of this to say is, I think we have learned in school that we're like, you can be successful as a nurse if you're good at this, or you get this number on your SATs. And I think the new paradigm of where we're headed is you can be good at whatever the heck you want to be good at, as long as it feels good to you and you're doing it in a way that is authentic to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like everybody in the personal development space, I'll say everybody, most people know Tony Robbins. But if you went to like some other country where they, I don't know, somebody in a corporate office, they wouldn't even know who the heck that was, right? But you're meant to be relevant to the group of people that you're meant to be relevant to, versus trying to make ourselves relevant to like everyone everywhere. Like step into your gifts and serve the people that you came here to serve, and do it in a way that feels good for you, where you feel successful, you're making the kind of money that you want to make, etc., versus trying to see ourselves against a norm, which I don't think you said, but that's just something I feel like they put on themselves.
It is. And it's something, especially like there's some quote that I'm not going to be able to remember, some like analogy where it's like, if you put Mozart in front of, a blank canvas, he would feel really dumb. And if you put Picasso in front of a piano, he would feel like an idiot. But they're geniuses. They're just in the wrong environment. And that I feel like that's kind of what you're getting at, where it's like, you don't have to be, advertising for every single person. You just have to know your, ideal client and just stick to that. Right. And that will light you up. But I want to get to reflectors, because are they like the most rare? I feel like, I don't know if I've ever met one.
Reflectors are 1%. So manifestors are 9%. Mangens and generators make up 70%. They're about split, almost even. I can't remember which one's a little bit ahead. Projectors are 20%. Projectors, your signpost is a feeling of success. And when you're on track, and when something is off, it's bitterness and resentment. And I will say, when my friend tries to plan parties for her family and they don't see her, she gets the most bitter of all time. And I'm like, I love you, but they didn't invite you. Go use your energy somewhere else, because you're very gifted. To me, keep trying to get people to see and recognize you who don't see and recognize you. Maybe reevaluate.
Reevaluate the crowd.
Exactly. Reflectors. So reflectors are 1% of the population. They are very rare. Here's the thing about reflectors. Reflectors are, I want to say, very energetically sensitive. Reflectors' gift is this innate ability to be in a space with people and see, spot, sense the health of whatever it is that they're involved with or what's off with it. They kind of have this energy where reflector, you can think of them as a mirror. Again, Karen Curry Parker, Quantum Human Design, she calls them calibrators. So they're very good at being able to sense when something is off, how something is doing. As an example, I like to think of this as like a really good therapist.
I was thinking like a therapist.
Yes. I lived with a reflector when I had roommates. I had one of my roommates with a reflector, and I'll just never forget. I woke up one morning. I had this experience. I had a friend had passed away, and I was like a week later, and I woke up one morning and I was like having breakfast, and he came into the kitchen and we started talking, and he's like, how are you? I'm like, I'm good. Da, 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 da. And he just stopped and he went, are you sure you're good? And I just started crying. I was like, I'm not good. And I didn't know it. But because they have this ability to be sensitive to things, they're very good at going in and being attuned to the people, places, spaces, and environments they're in. I don't want any reflector that might be listening to this to be like, oh my God, like, does that mean that all I could do is reflect back to people who they are? This is a really beautiful and powerful gift in that, like, a reflector maybe is an amazing interior designer that can go into a space and be like, this is not reflecting the true essence of who you are. Let's recalibrate this back to you. Being in an organization, even potentially as like a project manager, and being able to be like, this is off. Like this department is like, we need to shift this or fix this or whatever it may be. So they have this innate ability to be able to sense the health, well-being.
HR.
Yeah, exactly. Like potentially great in that space. But again, it has to be, I think the big thing for a reflector, so we said like, okay, manifestors initiate and manifesting generators, they have their process. The thing with a reflector is that they really need to immerse themselves into an environment where they can get attuned to what's going on and feel through what needs to happen. So technically, they have what's called they have no inner authority, which again, I don't really love that term because you absolutely have an inner authority. It's about giving yourself time and energy to feel and sense through something over time. They say technically like a 28-day cycle for a reflector is like, give yourself time to feel into things and notice and sense the nuance of what's off and what isn't off, what feels right, what doesn't feel right, because that's really truly where your wisdom and gifts come from as a reflector. So a friend of mine, when I lived in Colorado, she was ready to move. This was like 6 or 7 years ago. She was like ready to move. And she was like, I really want to move into this house with this group of people. She was like, but I'm actually going to I'm going to go like move in for 3 weeks and see how it feels before her lease was up and see how the environment felt. She ultimately ended up moving in and she was like, okay, I'm going to move in, but here's what feels off. Here's what doesn't, and essentially rearrange the environment to feel good for her. So reflectors are very attuned to environments and need to make sure that they're around people that feel good to them. Their space feels really good because that is your gift, is this energetic sensitivity you hold.
What are some key takeaways in terms of careers and your personal, archetype? And if someone is either looking to change careers or just, looking for some more contentment or like a promotion, or just some kind of career boost, what are some key things to look out for each type?
What I would say is whatever you just heard about your type that really resonated for you, notice if you have the ability in the career that you're currently in to let that aspect of you shine. So if you're a manifesting generator who's like, I don't have any space to fulfill my multi-passionate nature, think about that. I also want to invite us all into that responsibility of sometimes we have challenging situations that ask us to ask for what we need as well. So I always tell people before quitting or moving on from something, there may be a lesson there for you. If you're feeling frustrated, just sit back and think. If you're, oh, I'm frustrated, that means I need to quit. Well, no, maybe it just means you need to rearrange how you're doing something. So the first thing would be listen to the type, go back if you need to rewind and just ask yourself, am I shining my full energy in the environment that I am a part of?
Okay.
The second thing I would say is you can look at profile to understand kind of your gifts and what you're good at. First line profiles, you're going to see a profile. It's going to have 2 numbers. First lines are researchers, investigators. They really like to learn new things. They like to lay foundations and frameworks of understanding. So if you have a first line profile, being able to bring in your love of learning and trying new things and diving deep into research. Line 2s are here to be very natural and creative with what they do and share their natural gifts with other people. Line 3s need space for trial and error and adventure. If you say to a line 3, don't touch the stove, it's hot, they're going to be like, I'm going to touch the stove because I need to find out for myself. So I do have space to experiment and play. Line 4s, I'm a line 4. If you noticed, I've used all references to my friends since I've been on this podcast because I'm a big community person. Do I have opportunity to go out into my community, create community? Is a community that feels good to me? Line 5s are here to guide and lead. They like to lead the masses of people, provide very practical solutions. So if you got a line 5, like, do you have space? Are you in a leadership position of some kind? You don't necessarily have to be leadership, but do you feel like you're having an impact? Line 5s like to feel like they're having an impact. And line 6s are natural, wise teachers. They like to be able to see a broader perspective. A lot of times 6s like to bring wisdom. They like to teach. They like to guide and see things from a bigger perspective. They don't necessarily always want to be followed. They want to be able to be like, I'm going to bring the wisdom. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to help you see farther than you can see. 5s like to solve problems that are here in the now and offer solutions for the now, where 6s are like, where are we going? How are we evolving? Like, let's teach people that resourcefulness within themselves. So I would say, like, play with those as well. And you can see, like, is this happening in my career? And if not, don't try to force going in a new direction, but maybe you say, like, what are some things that light me up that I'm currently doing that could become a business? Or maybe what career ideas have I always wanted to pursue but never have? Have you always wanted to be a real estate agent? You're a 4th line, you're a generator, you love, whatever. Maybe start looking into it. I think we oftentimes, when we're dissatisfied, try to leap to something immediately to get rid of that feeling of dissatisfaction. But if you sit in it, you can learn a lot. And I think you can also start to just take step by step to move in the direction you want to go, which maybe manifesting generators, you don't move step by step. You kind of bump into stuff and jump from thing to thing. But I think always just taking time to slow down and get clear on why versus just jumping out of the frying pan to try to make the feeling go away is important.
Yeah. Oh my God. We have to do a part 2 because there's like all these other questions I have and so little time. But okay, just really quick, if you will, fast 5. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Fast 5. Favorite restaurant in South Florida?
Oh my gosh, Lulu's in Delray.
Yay. Oh, my friend owns that. Shout out Nicola. Yeah, she's amazing.
I'm just going to go name drop while I'm there next time.
Yeah, you should. Totally. Best career advice you've ever been given?
I think I gave this advice to myself. Is like, be yourself and do what feels true to you. So good job by me. Go ahead.
Yeah. Worst career advice you've ever been given?
Work a career you hate for the rest of your life and retire and then find happiness.
Oh, yuck. Yuck. God, that just made me sweat. Favorite daily practice of the moment?
Sunrise at the beach.
Oh, that sounds nice. And go-to self-care practice?
Me, coffee, journal in the morning.
Nice.
After the sunrise. That's my self-care.
Love it. Jess, thank you so much. We're going to include all the stuff in the show notes. You've been so generous with your time, and we will definitely have you back on. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Resume Well, where we explore the intersection of wellness, woo, and work. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends, family, and coworkers. Remember to follow us on Instagram at Courtney Austin Page and on LinkedIn either at Courtney Page or at Resume Recruiting and Development. Join us next week, and in the meantime, resume well in everything you do.